All right, Matthew, we are live.
Here, because we have a lot of ground to cover. I just want to welcome everybody. Thank you all so much for coming to our SERFA session here. This one is going to be called Art and Activism, Can Music Change the World? So this is part of a series of webinars that SERFA is hosting on the third Thursday of every month. And for those who maybe aren't part of SERFA or Folk Alliance, SERFA is Southeast Regional Folk Alliance, and we're the Southeastern Regional Chapter of Folk Alliance International, which is a 501c3 nonprofit charitable organization. And together, our goal is to provide opportunities for our members to network locally and advance the overall mission of Folk Alliance to serve and strengthen and engage the global folk music community through preservation, presentation, and promotion. So if you're not already a member, I encourage you to check out Folk Alliance International's website at folk.org and SERFA's website at serfa.org, SERFA. And while you're there, you definitely want to join the SERFA mailing list and join the SERFA Folk Google group, which is kind of a different conversation thread. The mailing list will give you the official emails from SERFA, and the SERFA Folk Google group is a conversation thread where members communicate with each other and can have good discussions there. You can also find us all on Facebook. So during this webinar, I encourage you to use the chat function to, you can either converse with each other. By using the to box, you can either address all the panelists or all the attendees or all the panelists and the attendees, or you can message an individual. But also, if you have specific questions for our panelists, I encourage you to use the Q&A feature. That's also probably at the bottom of your screen, Q&A. Those are the questions that we're going to refer to. There's going to be a good question and answer time after our panelists make their presentations. At the end, we will look into the Q&A and the panelists will address questions from the Q&A. So you can use both, but make sure if you don't get something answered in chat that you have it in the Q&A. All right, so art and activism, we're going to be talking about the role that music plays in movements for social change and writing protest songs. And we have some wonderful panelists today. And I'm just going to introduce the first couple, and that is going to be Michael and Nell. And I saw them online for the first time a few months ago. I attended their multimedia Joe Hill Roadshow a few months ago, which was a wonderful multimedia show, and invited them here to help facilitate this gathering. So they're wonderful activists, songwriters, and historians with a lot to share about the role music can change and has played in movements for social change. So this is Michael J. August and Nell Levin.
Well, hello everybody. We're really thrilled to be here today with you guys and with our great panelists, Susan Shann and Tim Easton, people we very much admire. And so I'm just going to kind of kick things off right now with kind of an overview of what my conception of the discussion, where the discussion might go today. So a little background on me, okay? I am somebody who was actually active in the 1960s in the protest to end the war in Vietnam. So my activism goes back many, many years. After the Students for a Democratic Society, which I belong to, kind of was taken over by the Weathermen, I kind of quit politics for a while and went off and was a musician for about 20 years. And then I moved to Nashville, Tennessee in 1989, and things were so crazy and backward here in Tennessee that I jumped back in and became an activist again. And I ran an organization called Tennessee Alliance for Progress for 14 years, a progressive organization. Susan Shann was on our board of directors. And in the meantime, I was continuing to pursue music. So, you know, melding these two things is very much who I am. So, I have some notes here, so pardon me if I have to look down a little bit to read them. There are multiple crises going on in our country today, obviously. So what we want to discuss today is what role can musicians play in all of this? Now, sometimes we hear people say, just shut up and sing. They don't want to hear politics, and I can understand that. People go out, they want to have a good time, they don't want to be preached at. But a lot of this comes sometimes from the corporate music world, something we're very familiar with right here in Nashville. And of course, they're concerned about their bottom line, and they don't want anything that's going to rock the boat or create controversy. An interesting thing happened with Ronnie Dunn. He was half of the duo Brooks and Dunn, who sold umpteen gazillion records, and he wanted to put out this song called Cost of Living. And it's a great song about a working class guy looking for a job in a down economy. And he got a lot of pushback from his label head. They did not want him to put out this song. He ended up putting it out anyway, and in 2017, Cost of Living was nominated for a Grammy. Now, folk artists, we're engaged with issues regularly. That's part of what being a folk singer has always meant. But our voices are needed now more than ever. And as I mentioned, we are going to bring Tim Easton and Susan Shann in pretty quickly. So I came up with a list of questions that I thought maybe we could consider today. Number one, how can we as musicians contribute to the change that is taking place in our world today? What role can musicians play in bringing people together? What role can our songs play in educating and organizing people around issues? How do we write, quote, protest songs that are both universal and timely? How do we channel our anger in positive directions? Are fewer songs of social significance being written today as opposed to the 60s? I don't really think that's the case, and I'll tell you why in just a couple minutes here. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the role of the corporate music industry in tamping down protest music. So how can we develop alternative ways to get our music out to people? Is protest music just reaching a niche audience? Gigs are gone. Anybody who's got anything to do with the music business knows that. So now we no longer have these streams of income from the door, CDs, or merchandise. So another question I have is, what strategies can we use to survive financially? How can we perform music with integrity and also pay our bills? And how do we reach a broader audience? And how can we use our music to support organizations that we like who are working for social, racial, economic, and environmental justice? Now, protest music is very rooted in the United States history. Every major movement that this country has ever had has had its protest songs, from slave emancipation to women's suffrage to the labor movement, civil rights, the anti-war movement, the feminist movement, the environmental movement. What are the benefits of protest music? Well, for one thing, it helps people realize that they're not alone in dissenting against injustices. It builds a sense of community, and it helps groups affect change. It can also rouse people at large gatherings, be part of campaigns, tell stories of injustices, and depict the music and reproduce the music of ordinary people and depict their lives. It creates a sense of emotional connection and social coherence, even among strangers. It is a social glue. Today, most significant and powerful protest music is coming from people of color because of the Black Lives Matters movement. There's many new raps and protest songs that are being written today as a result of this powerful movement. The legendary rap artist LL Cool J has a rap, and he says in this, "For 400 years, you had your knees on our necks. Watching that man die slow left a hole. He cried for his mama as the murder unfolded." And he closes with the lines of "Black Lives Matter forever." M.C. Taylor is a white folklorist, singer-songwriter who goes by his Golden Messenger. He uploaded a song 5 days after Floyd's death, and he says, "I watched that video of George Floyd being murdered by those cops in Minneapolis, and I felt sick." He says, "Any artist with a platform, no matter what their idiom, needs to speak up. This is no time for silence." H.E.R., and I'm not sure if she goes by H.E.R. or her, wrote a song called "I Can't Breathe." She said, "I think music is powerful when it comes to change and healing. I wrote this song to make a mark in history." Now, Trey Songz wrote a powerful gospel-tinged track called "How Many Times." It poses questions reminiscent of Bob Dylan's "Blowing in the Wind," questions none of which has a good answer. I'm just going to play you a little bit of his powerful video, which I encourage you to take a look at on YouTube. Here it is. And there are some other really terrific videos that have come out recently on YouTube. I'm operating in a completely different realm of music, so a lot of times I'm not as familiar as I should be about what's going on with this kind of music, but it really is powerful. So, to close my little segment, I am going to say this. My hero is Woody Guthrie, and up there on the screen is the poster that is in my office, and I look at this every day. Woody Guthrie, the saint of the working man, okay? I had the privilege in my youth to hang out with Bob Dylan in the Village. This is back in our very early days, and at this point, he used to go, he was going to Hoboken every week to visit Woody Guthrie, who was in the hospital dying of Huntington's chorea. So, obviously, Woody Guthrie was a major influence on Bob Dylan, and for me, Woody will always be my touchstone on how to write a protest song that is both timely and universal. And with that, I'm going to pass it along to Michael.
All right. So, while Nell was protesting in the Vietnam War, I was actually in Vietnam as a soldier. And subsequently, after I got out of the Army, which was as quickly as I could possibly do, I became a little more politically aware, and I wound up joining a group called the Veterans for Peace, which I'm still a member of. So as Nell mentioned, we do a presentation called the Joe Hill Roadshow about Joe Hill and the early labor movement, and in particular this group called a union called the Industrial Workers of the World, the IWW, or the Wobblies as they were known, and they were formed in 1905. So I mention this because they were a singing union. They sang all the time. They sang on the job, they sang at meetings, they sang on picket lines, and they sang when they were put in jail. Here is a little quote from the San Diego Chief of Police in 1912 to give you a little flavor of how these guys operated. And so the San Diego Chief of Police says, "I cannot punish them. Listen to them singing. They are singing all the time and yelling and hollering and telling the jailers to quit work and join the union." So that's what they did. Their songs basically have these two purposes. They have the purpose of passing information, because they didn't have the telecommunications back then that we have now, and also to uplift their spirits, which they did when they were in jail and on picket lines, etc. Many of these wobbly songs were written to the tunes of melodies, to the melodies of songs that were familiar back then. And on the screen is the Little Red Songbook. They sold thousands of copies of this for 10 cents, and they had the lyrics for the songs. And when it was time to sing, the Wobblies just pulled out their Little Red Songbook, and they could sing along very easily to melodies that they already knew. So, Joe Hill said, in a letter from jail, "A pamphlet, no matter how good, is read only once. But a song is learned by heart and repeated over and over. And I maintain that if a person can take a few cold common sense facts, put them into a song, and then dress them up in a cloak of humor to take the dryness off them, he will succeed in reaching a great number of workers who are unwilling to read a pamphlet or an editorial on economic science. Now, there was another group called the Knights of Labor that preceded the IWW. They were active in the late 1800s, and they had a song called Hold the Fort, which was written to the melody of an old hymn. And that was the most popular labor song until 1915, when this man, Ralph Chaplin, wrote a song called Solidarity Forever. And that has become the anthem of the American labor movement. So Nell and I are going to play just a little bit of this tune.
We heard a little bit of it there in that introductory music, so I think we're
Right.
going to do the verse that they didn't sing, which is the one about building a new, making change.
Yeah, a little interesting side note. We had a chance to play for the Eugene Debs Society up in Terre Haute a couple of years ago, and we had our set of our songs that we were going to present to them. Most of them actually were very appropriate for that audience, and out of the blue, just totally unexpected, they asked us to play Solidarity Forever, and on the back of their menu, they had 3 verses of Solidarity Forever, and they just happened to be the same 3 verses that we use on a regular basis in our
That was a
Hill
lucky
song.
break.
So we didn't have to stand there and read the lyrics. We already knew them. So
Here we
that
go,
was
a little bit
fortunate.
of, this is the last verse of Solidarity Forever.
In our hands is placed the power greater than their hoarded gold, greater than the might of armies multiplied 1,000-fold. We can bring to birth a new world from the ashes of the old, for the Union makes us strong.
Here we go.
Solidarity forever, solidarity forever. Solidarity forever, for the Union makes us strong.
All right.
And the tradition is for when that song comes up is to stop whatever you're doing, hold hands, and sing along on the chorus.
And circle up and sing the song chorus.
Yes, this happened with us at a dinner that we were playing for the Knoxville Labor Council sometime back. Now this picture here is the United Auto Workers Sit-Down Strike Orchestra. They had a sit-down strike in 1937. The Wobblies had the first sit-down strike in 1906, and that tradition carried forth. So you see their sit-down strike orchestra. In the front is the guitar, the banjo, and the fiddle. So let's see, where am I now?
You take your capo off, we're going to do.
Ah, yes. So as musicians, I think Nell has alluded to this. What we do is basically use our songs. We hope to educate and really as calls to action for situations that need correction. Joe Hill did this, Bob Dylan, Phil Oakes, David Rovix, and Tom Nielsen do that now. And I want to answer one question. I don't know if there are less labor songs protest songs being written now than there were, say, in the 60s. That question came up. But what I do believe is that in the 60s, they became popular, and the record executives and the radio executives figured that there was money to be made. So those kinds of songs got more exposure back then. So, the Salvation Army Band. Joe Hill wrote his most famous song, The Preacher and the Slave, as a response and a challenge to the Salvation Army Band, who was often sent down to Skid Row, where the Wobblies were attempting to recruit members, and used their brass band to try to drown out the Wobblies. So in this song, Joe Hill refers to the Salvation Army as the Starvation Army. And this is where the phrase pie in the sky originated. Joe Hill invented it. So we're going to close this section with our rendition of The Preacher and the Slave. answer with voices so sweet. You will eat by and by in that glorious land above the sky. Work and pray, live on hay. You'll get pie in the sky when you die. That's a lie. Oh, the Starvation Army, they play. They sing and they clap and they pray till they get all your coin on the drum. They'll then tell you that you're on the bum. You will eat by and by in that glorious land above the sky. Work and pray, live on hay. You'll get pie in the sky when you die. That's a lie. Working folks of all countries unite. Side by side, for freedom we will fight. When the world and its wealth we have gained, to the 1% we'll sing this refrain. You will eat by and by when you've learned how to cook and how to fry. Chop some wood, it'll do you good. Then we'll meet in the sweet by and by. Here we go. You will eat by and by in that glorious land above the sky. Work and pray, live on hay. You'll get pie in the sky when you die. That's a lie. All right.
Okay. Well, thank you. That concludes our little portion of the show. And so now we are going to introduce Susan Shann.
All right, great job, guys. I probably don't even need to talk into this. Well, hey, everybody.
Well, I'm just going to say something, though. They told me to say something about you, Susan.
Oh, okay.
All right. So I'm going to say this. That Susan is a really incredible activist. She has been for many, many years here in Nashville. I've been on board. She was on the board of my organization, for one thing. And a wonderful artist, a wonderful songwriter. She's endlessly creative, coming up with great songs all the time. So I'm really thrilled that we were able to get her to be on this program today. All right, Susan.
Thank you, Nell. And it's an honor to be here for sure. This is a subject very close to my heart, the idea of integrating activism and art. And as Nell said, I write a lot of songs related to causes or specific issues. But I'll go back and just give you a little background. So I'm originally from New Jersey and moved down to Nashville in 2003. I'm the baby of 5, and I'm also the daughter of I was raised by a single mom who was a social worker. So I grew up in a very progressive environment. My mom was always taking me, even as a young girl, to campaign for certain candidates or go to certain rallies and events. So that was kind of ingrained in me from a young age. And actually, when I moved to Nashville in 2003, I said as the baby of 5, so my sister Patty and my brother Steve both went to Woodstock. I'm sort of at the tail end of the baby boomer generation, so I'm pretty familiar with the music of that era. And yeah, I mean, cause songs were actually being mainstreamed at that point in time because the record companies knew that they could, sell them, and it wasn't maybe it was controversial for some, but they certainly had their audience. And so I grew up listening to Crosby, Stills and Nash and Jimi Hendrix and Joni Mitchell and all the great artists of the 60s, late 60s, 70s. So that too is ingrained in me. Anyway, when I moved to Nashville, what actually got me involved in activism, I moved down to be a songwriter, and my first intention was to write, like a lot of people, you move to Nashville, you're going to write for the country music market. You're going to get your songs cut by big artists. I hope country music lovers out there will forgive me. What I discovered pretty quickly was that wasn't really my thing. Country music just didn't grab me. It didn't feel genuine to who I was. Plus, I was raised listening to rock and roll, so the rebel in me was like, you know, that's not my style. So I found my community. Of course, Nashville is very broad stylistically. There's every genre here. Amazing musicians, amazing singers, amazing songwriters. It's very humbling. Wherever you come from, you quickly realize you're a small fish in a big sea. Here in Nashville, the talent's incredible. But as far as activism, recycling was the first thing that got me involved in activism down here. Coming from New Jersey, we had a very comprehensive recycling program, and I quickly discovered that recycling was kind of minimal where I was, and so I started getting involved with some organizations, just seeing what we could do about that. And of course, I was well aware of the climate issue. Then we called it global warming, and then I had read Al Gore's books, Earth in the Balance, which I think he wrote in the late 80s, and then of course An Inconvenient Truth came out about a year or two after that. John Kerry, after his run for the presidency in 2004, because I was involved with that too. I was with Move On. So I was an activist all along. But then he wrote a book called This Moment on Earth, and that really inspired me as well. Both Al Gore and John Kerry were early inspirations for my activism here in Nashville. And once you get involved with the climate and environmental communities, you're hooked into the larger progressive community as well. And I met so many wonderful people. It was just an honor. It was an inspiration. It feeds your soul when you can be surrounded by a community of people that care deeply and that are really trying to understand the issues and talk about and imagine and create a world that potentially can work for everyone. I mean, so I've done a lot. I had a show called Earth Revolution. I'll try to just rip through a couple things quickly because I know 10 minutes goes very fast. That was a local access cable show that I created, and I would interview people from non-governmental organizations, entrepreneurs in green businesses, and talk mostly in the studio. It was sort of like an interview format, and then I moved that on location. I did some really cool shows, like somebody had built an Earth ship. Some of you may be familiar with what those are, but I won't explain now. Mark Reynolds, Earth ships. And he built one in Gallatin, Tennessee, so I went out on location there, got like 40,000 views, whatever, on that one. It was pretty cool. And then I founded Transition Nashville based on the transition movement, which was started by Rob Hopkins, a permaculture teacher, which led me to get certified in permaculture. And as Nell said, I served on the board of Tennessee Alliance for Progress. I'm currently the chair of the Nashville Peace and Justice Center. I've been very involved with another group called the Cumberland Green Bioregional Council. And Nell and Michael for sure know them as well. We are kind of like one big tribe here. And the Cumberland Greens are how I met my husband, but that's another story. So, so I've done a lot of stuff, and I think that the biggest point, my biggest takeaway from my years of experience as an activist, I had a newsletter where I would send out events that other people were doing until I discovered somebody else was already doing that and saved me a lot of time. National Peace and Justice has the e-blast where they send out all kinds of progressive events, but what I learned is that it feeds me. It helps me to grow as a human being. And when you're engaged in community and when you're willing to step out of your comfort zone and speak for things that really matter and speak for truth and justice, like for all people, like the American dream promises us, at least in theory, then you're fed. You may be helping other people, but it's not a sacrifice. It's a gift. So I know we're going to be talking about how to monetize music, but I want to stress that point because often I've done things for free and I've never regretted it, ever. I've done it for causes I believe in. So with that in mind, I'm just going to play one song right now and maybe a snippet of another depending on time. We may be out of time at that point, but this is one I actually wrote related to SERFA, Southeast Regional Folk Alliance, holding this panel. I met Cy Khan. Some of you may know Cy. He's a longtime activist, very respected and revered in the folk community. And Tret Fuhr, and they were recruiting members for an organization called Musicians United to Protect Bristol Bay. So I joined that organization, and I learned more about the issue of this Northern Dynasty, this mining company called Northern Dynasty, trying to lift protections on the area in Bristol Bay, the headwaters, and that region. It's very ecologically sensitive. Not only that, it's home to 40% of the world's salmon come into the Bristol Bay region, spawn, and then swim back out to the sea. That's a whole lot of salmon, folks. That's livelihoods. That's, you know, just the natural sensitivity of that process that are still being threatened by this company. So when I learned all that, I wrote a song at Sai's behest for the organization to raise awareness about the issue, and then they had a contest in 2017 when it was hot and heavy, Northern Dynasty trying to push through engineering permits and so on. And I was honored to win that contest, but obviously that's not why I wrote the song. But I'm going to play that for you now, since this is a SERFA workshop. And if I have time, I've got tons of cause songs, but obviously in the interest of time, I'll focus on one or two. Okay, so this is called Price on Heaven. It goes like this. Along the shores of Bristol Bay, in the land of the midnight sun, an eagle soars, caribou graze, and the mighty salmon run. It's a home, a church, a playground, meets body and mind and soul. Tell me, why would anyone risk it all for the price of a pot of gold? You can't put a price on heaven, can't steal from God's own hand, 'cause his masterpiece is written in these waters and this land. Go on, talk about your prophet, go on, try, but you're gonna fail. You can't put a price on heaven, Bristol Bay is not for sale. No, it's not for sale. These are crazy times we live in, where money and power reign, where we sacrifice the real thing for material gain. But you can't buy back a mountain, or a forest, or a stream. No, you can't take out the poison from what was pure and running clean. You can't put a price on heaven, can't steal from God's own hand, 'cause his masterpiece is written in these waters and this land. Go on, talk about your prophet, go on, try, but you're gonna fail. You can't put a price on heaven, Bristol Bay is not for sale. Yeah, we all love our children, I know this much is true, but our dream for their future comes down to what we do. To the seventh generation is the promise we must make, to leave things better than we found them, to give more than we take, and not put a price on heaven, not steal from God's own hand, 'cause his masterpiece is written in these waters and this land. Not about a greed or profit, if we do, then we're gonna fail. You can't put a price on heaven, Bristol Bay is not for sale. No, it's not for sale. All right, so there's that. How am I doing on time? Do I have time for a snippet of another song? Yes, no, maybe? I can't hear anyone else. Okay, thumbs up. I get a thumbs up from Tim. That's good. I saw that. All right. So a more recent song, there's plenty in between, but a more recent one that I did, you know, Nell and Michael were talking about the George Floyd situation and just kind of racism, systemic racism in this country in general, and what an issue that really is. And there's some people may be in denial about that, but it's a fact, and it's something we got to look at, and it's something that has to end. And so I didn't want to write a song just about George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, the individual names. Yes, say their names, but recognize that this is a very big problem in this country. So this song is called America the Possible, because I like to take the view that, there's always the possibility of a better way, and the possibility of us coming together to create that. Never give up your power, ever. So this song, I'll just do a verse and chorus, and then I'll stop, because I may be out of time at that point. Am I in the right key? Yeah. And tell me why just being who you are should be a crime. Why the color of my skin determines if that fate is mine. If Jesus Christ were here, he would be weeping for us all. 'Cause if we can't lift each other up, together we will fall. And you can say that's not your problem. You can sit out on the sidelines. Or you can join in that fight. Either way, it's a decision. It's one you'll have to live with. In the struggle between wrong and right. See, I believe together we can be unstoppable. Yes, I do. Oh, I believe in America possible. I'm thinking I better stop. Can I keep going? I'll be really quick. Okay. For every name heard in the news, 10,000 more unknown. Living in the shadows of a promise they have not been shown. Behind our differences, we share a common dream. A country where we all can live in peace and harmony. And you can say that's not your problem. You can sit out on the sidelines. Or you can join in that fight. Either way, it's a decision. It's one you'll have to live with. In the struggle between wrong and right. Oh, I believe together we can be unstoppable. Yes, I believe in America possible. Okay, I'll stop there. My friend Greta put a beautiful series of images on that video, and it's on YouTube. It's on my YouTube channel, Susan Shann. I don't know if it's on my website. Anyway, really appreciate being here. I'm excited to hear from Tim. I'm going to pass it forward. Thanks all of you for joining us today, and hopefully we'll have a nice conversation following. All right.
Okay, so now we're going to go to the fabulous Tim Easton. So, you ready, Tim? Okay,
I am so ready.
All righty. So, when I first met Tim a little while ago, one of the reasons I immediately liked him was he was wearing a Woody Guthrie pin on his shirt. I said, "Okay, man, I'm with you." Tim honed his chops busking all over Europe for many, many years. Now, you can't have a better resume than that. And so he's a great songwriter and performer, and we are really thrilled to have him with us today. So, Tim, take it away.
Hey, everybody. How's it going? Thanks so much for inviting me down here, SERFA, and everybody that's responsible and participating in this. I'm drinking from a Salmon Fest cup here, which is a festival that helps protect Bristol Bay from that pebble mine. And I appreciate that song, Susan. We gather here today to discuss the old and the new and what's happening and what we can do now. And when Susan started talking about her family and stuff, that got me thinking about, like, I'm the youngest of 7 from upstate New York. My mom was Canadian. And it was my mom that was playing the Bob Dylan albums in the later 60s. I was born in the late part of the 60s. And my brother, well, I think he was grounded. He couldn't go to Woodstock because he was grounded. But yeah, those records are being played around my house. And of course, It was my sisters and my brothers who taught me to study the heroes of my heroes. So through Bob Dylan, I eventually found a large amount of great African American bluesmen, and then Woody Guthrie, of course. And so that's an early on thing, the Woody Guthrie thing. And I was just kind of reading this book recently. This is a great book for anybody to check out. It's called Woody Guthrie, American Radical, and it's by Will Kaufman, who I met at the Woody Guthrie Center in Tulsa. So yeah, I'm kind of a student of that work, which kind of like in that world, every action we're doing, there's no separation between art and politics. You observe a situation going on, you observe an injustice, and you write about it, you make art about it. And so that was kind of a regular thing early on. And of course, with the Beatles and the Stones and certainly Neil Young's song Ohio early on, right? That pertained to me because I grew up in Akron, Ohio. And the song Ohio came out just a few weeks after the Kent State Massacre, you know? So those were the times when, yeah, major labels and corporations were really getting behind the massive changes that were going on because of that, because of the Vietnam War, and things that all kind of changed. There was comedians like George Carlin and great philosophers and, you know, rock and rollers that were speaking about injustice, and it was mainstream stuff. And then that all switched around, and along came, you know, Steve Martin playing his banjo, not making political jokes and doing more mainstream stuff. And that happened in of course in the pop charts and whatnot, and in the country music as well. Most of us here are not famous people. Otherwise, you know, like we brought up the idea of Big and Rich, or was it Brooks and Dunn? I think it was Big and Rich. And one of the guys had a political song, he said, or was it Brooks and Dunn? I can't remember. But yeah, Nashville, Tennessee, not the epicenter of protest singers. I'll tell you that right now. It's just not really. But as Susan pointed out, there's a huge variation here. It's a huge amount of beautiful, wonderful people. You know, you think it's a weird thing being a folk singer in your town, being a folk singer in Nashville. Well, you find your friends really fast, and it's actually a beautiful town full of super supportive people. And in my opinion of, you know, it's not that important, but I always wonder when someone doesn't step out, and because there are young artists, you know, like Sturgill Simpson and very many more, Margot Price, who are kicking ass in independent country music, and also speaking out about injustices, speaking out about all kinds of injustice. So it is happening out there, and I encourage you in the chat, anybody that's in here now with us, to post the names of artists that are working today, that are, you know, working today, that you might be able to, that are putting out records right now, that are also writing some kind of political or observational lyrics into their work. And there are very many. There's another guy named Joe Pug. He lives in Austin, Texas. There are many people doing it today. And I think as a musician, how can I contribute to the change that is taking place in our world? That's a lifelong thing. And to me, it's local. Local is the best thing you can do. And even if it's just calling and talking to your friends and uniting your friends together and discussing what's going on, trying to pull someone off the abyss of the darkness. That's right now, we're super polarized. Everybody knows that. It would be remiss to not admit that we are in a little bit of a perilous time right now. Those that were alive during the Vietnam War and active in protesting it and fighting it, you know, they too, you know, can say that today is just as maybe a divisive time as ever existed for all of us that are alive. I mean, we know what's going on right now. It's a polarized thing. So I try to just be myself and not be pointing fingers and too preachy when I'm on stage or in my songs. Now, I've made a mistake, and there's a few songs I have out there. I have one that's Jesus protect me from your followers. But it says, not all of them, just the ones who turn love into fear and hatred, right? I had to bring my mom back over into the fold there and say, hey, Mom, this is observing something that I'm seeing, you know? So I have a couple of songs that are a little bit divisive and stuff and get people a little bit tense. But then I have others where I'm just really making observations and asking you to make your own decisions about it. And I think that's all we can do. We could just hope somehow, some way that we've learned something from the 60s. My God, I mean, it's certainly, there are artists out there, though, that are kicking ass, both on the charts and politically. They're speaking their minds and being real about it. And I would definitely point, in Nashville here, I would definitely point to Margot Price, and who's talking about women's equality in pay and stuff like that. And that's been going on actually subversively in country music for quite a bit, I think, through Dolly Parton onward. It's pretty, if you really check in there, the women are kicking ass, and we thank you for that. How can we develop alternative ways to get our music out to people? Well, we have the internet now, and we are able to find our people, and we can do that. And thanks for finding each other. Here we are hanging out a little bit. Maybe there's only a few of us, but that little bit of work to a close friend or reaching out to someone who's like on the edge, maybe getting nihilistic about it, like I don't want to participate in this election thing. I can't even deal with it. Maybe reaching out to them and talking to them and asking them how they're doing is just the way to go. It's the most we can do sometimes, really, because we don't have the big platforms of some of the people that are out there on Spotify that are just raking it, and doing well in the streams and stuff like that. So we have to just kind of focus on our immediate surroundings, Like when I say when participating in the election, you got to participate in the election that elects the dog catcher as well as the president, all right? Yesterday I went and voted here in Nashville and Madison. It was the first day of early voting in Tennessee, and I got on my bike, I rode down there. I was really proud to enjoy this beautiful fall day. I got down there at lunchtime, so there's a pretty good line, about 45 people. I started observing, as I do. That's what we can do as artists too, is just observe and document what we see and try to be honest and real about it. And I was wearing my Woody Guthrie shirt yesterday, as I do all the time. Thank you to the Woody Guthrie Museum in Tulsa for supplying me with all these t-shirts. And they got one that just says, "This machine kills fascists" on the front. It's a pretty, it's bright red, but it says "vote" on the back. And I went down there yesterday and I was wearing that, and there was a police officer. He was covered in tattoos. This is a classic American scene. He was marching up and down the line, making sure everybody was keeping in order and keeping 6 feet away and had masks on and all that. And I had been having a conversation with the woman next to me. She was like, "Now, what do you do if there's only Democrat's name on the ticket and it doesn't have a Republican name on there?" I said, "Well, I think those people are running unopposed." She said, "Well, my family used to be Democrats, but now I'm voting all Republican." And I said, "I thank you so much for your participation. This is amazing that we can step up here and vote together, And my family, which I was going to tie into Susan, what Susan said, my family was just dyed in the wool Republican family from upstate New York, Albany, New York. And then somewhere around the era of Richard Nixon, maybe before that, and Kennedy too, my parents swapped over, just switched sides, and lost all of their friends. And my dad, who's 95 today, who is incapable of remembering the president's name right now, he just says, tell me you're voting, right? You're going to vote." And I said, "Yeah, of course I'm going to vote, Dad. Are you going to vote?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to vote. Damn right I'm going to vote. I'm going to participate." So I learned a lot from my parents. And I wrote this song not too long ago, but it was after an experience I had many years ago when I was first a street musician in Europe. I went over there, and there was a guy. I got to London, and there was a big protest, a big march through town that started in Trafalgar Square and ended in a big field out in Clapham Commons. And the bands that were playing at the end, it was like Sting and Big Audio Dynamite. One of the guys from The Clash was in that band. Boy George, and this guy named Billy Bragg, who I had never heard of before. And to top that off, the whole march, the whole demonstration was to raise awareness for a man that was in prison who I had also never heard of before. And his name was, why am I spacing out right now? Okay, help me out. Oh my God, I just totally had a brain meltdown right now. South African man, okay, Nelson Mandela. Oh my God, okay, I just had a little meltdown there. Because I'm just looking at a screen, I'm like, is anybody even here? So Nelson Mandela is in prison And I was not aware of his life and his activity or what he was in prison for or what he did. And so at this time in the 80s, he's in prison and we're having a march across town. And I go participate in that march. I walk across town with everybody. And at one point, I step off the side of the thing and I'm watching the protesters walk by. And this guy with a big green mohawk steps up to me and he says, "Don't spectate, participate." So that was just a kind of a protest expression, right? Don't spectate, participate. I filed that away and I wrote a song with that title that talks about voter participation. And this is just one of the large handful of songs I have that might lean in some kind of under the guise of a protest song, really observational song. So hopefully I've answered some of your questions. If you got any more, throw them in the chat. We'd love to talk to you. I'm going to play this one tune, and it's called "Don't Spectate, Participate." It's quite short. The time has come for us to go and use our voices, cast our votes. But half of us will just look on while the others try to fix what's wrong. Don't spectate, participate. If you don't give a damn and you've nothing to say, well, if you won't give a damn, step out of the way. And if I hear another citizen say, this election won't affect me either way, well, my selfish friend, that may be true. There's a few more people in this world besides you. Don't spectate, participate. If you don't give a damn and you've nothing to say, well, if you won't give a damn, step out of the way. And if I hear about another regulation that prevents anybody from participation, talking to you, North Carolina, today. If I hear about another regulation that prevents anybody from participation, well, I say to you, as you try to turn back time, you know a lot of folks died so we could have this right. Don't spectate, participate. If you don't give a damn and you've nothing to say, well, if you won't give a damn, step out of the way. Well, you might give a damn as you're fading away, but if you won't give a damn, it's a damn shame. Thanks for participating, everybody, here today.
Well, thank you all so much. That was really great. We have just a couple minutes left, so I want to jump into a couple of questions that came in. One here asked, there is a lot of protest music out there now, but does it affect change, or how does it?
Well, I'm going to just jump in on that one. I think it does. You know, I think the protest music that we're seeing today is coming from the ground up. You know, a lot of it's coming from these very demonstrations that we're having, like the Black Lives Matters. I mean, I lived through the '60s, and I'd say we're living in an era that's just about up there with the '60s in terms of grassroots participation, and I think it does. I think it does make a big difference. And Michael and I had one song we wanted to sing, one of our originals. Can we do that right now?
If you want to not have any more discussion, we're at 2 minutes before 4.
Okay, yeah, we were saving the song for now, so we could do an original.
Saving the best for last, right?
Okay. I want to ask one more question before we do that.
I mean, is it okay if we go over our time? Is that a problem? Or
I don't think so. I'm going to say no.
Good.
We'll just
Okay.
go a minute over. So if anyone has somewhere to be, you can be there. But I just want to, along those lines, you have recommendations for getting people. I do see movements happening and people gathering. I don't necessarily hear a lot of singing. I hear maybe a chant here and there. Any thoughts on getting people actually singing at these large gatherings?
Well, I don't know. We've been asked to come to the Women's March on Saturday, and they said they wanted a labor song, so we're going to sing them Solidarity. They said they wanted something people could sing along on, and this is at the Women's March. I thought it was a little unusual request, but hey,
Well, it's also the Black Lives Matter sign.
That's right. They're putting on the streets of Nashville on Saturday. Black Lives Matter mural is going down right over here in East Nashville. So both those events are happening on Saturday.
Can I say one thing really quick?
Yeah.
Sure.
Just with regard to, I think you said Michael Stock's question about songs affecting change. My feeling is they absolutely do, from personal experience and also from things people have said to me about my songs. I know how many artists have influenced me and motivated me to do things and get involved where I might not have otherwise. And you were just talking about songs that everyone can sing, and I think that's a really powerful thing. That's a demonstration of our coming together, that music really can bring us together in a way that transcends, you know, the spoken word or the written word. Anyway, I just want to throw that in. My feeling is, yeah, that it may not affect everyone, but people are influenced by that. I know. I'm a witness.
Thank you.
Yeah, lift spirits, and it brings energy level up in groups.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. Yeah, I think it does. I think it really does.
All right, well, we're going to close out with one more song from Michael and Nell, but I want to thank everyone for being here today. Our panelists, Michael and Nell, Susan, Tim, thank you so much, and Jared from Folk Alliance International behind the scenes here. Thank you all. And you can find these seminars, these SERFA sessions recorded on the SERFA website. So you can go back and find the previous sessions and rewatch them or share them with your friends who missed them the first time. So thank you again, and Michael and Nell.
Yeah, so we just wanted to do this song because this came out of, okay, what happened was actually I was reading Time magazine, and it was all about, you know, if you remember our so-called president, Trump went out and early in his campaign said he was going to bring the jobs all back to America, blah, 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 blah. You guys probably remember that well. This is what really happened up in at the Carrier plant in Indiana. And
Yeah.
It's called Boss Called a Meeting.
Yeah, and before we start, I'll just mention that we had the opportunity to go to the Steelworkers Union meeting and play this song for them, and they were the ones that were mainly affected by this situation.
Okay,
So,
here we go.
so Nell read the article, started the song, got into it some ways, and I came along and threw a little personal experience in it. So this is a combination
Before
of
Michael
personal
became a
experience
big folk
and,
artist,
a
he used
big
to
folk artist.
a big folk artist used to work in warehouses, you know, and shit.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of these boss meetings I've
He knows all about it.
participated in there anyway.
Here it goes.
Anyhow, here we go. Boss called the meeting, so we had to go. Said they're moving the plant to Mexico. We all heard the rumors, now we know they're moving the plant to Mexico. All I've ever known is the blue-collar life. This union job fed my kids and my wife. I gave up my muscle, gave up my brain. Now I'm knocked to the ground by this runaway train. Losing my job never felt so low. They're moving the plant to Mexico. How am I gonna pay all the money I owe? They're moving the plant to Mexico. eat. They're just like us, they're taking the heat. We're all getting burned and that's the way it feels. All millionaires in easy chairs make these deals. Indiana, Michigan, and Ohio, they're moving the plants to Mexico. What'll I do? Where will I go? They're moving all the plants to Mexico. It's not just the money, but the friends I'll miss. I'll see some of the guys from time to time at the bar or the unemployment line. Boss called the meeting, so we had to go. Said they're moving the plant to Mexico. Politicians' promises are all for show. They're moving the plant to Mexico. Politicians' promises are all for show. They're moving the plant to Mexico. There.
Thank you.
So, thank you so much for SERFA for putting this on and inviting us to do it. We sure appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks, Jared. Thanks, Nell and Michael. Tim.
Yes.
And as I used to
Peace
say on my radio show, be well and beware.
Bye, everybody.